Hello, welcome to another edition of Leadership Talks. I'm BJ McKay. So if you're watching these series, you're picking it up. The flow and the best way to watch these, if you're watching, is to download the PDF note guide that you'll see on the Leadership Talks, advisausa.com/leadership talks. Download that. It probably looks prettier than this one does. And then work through it. If you're using this as part of your ongoing development as a leader, manager, sales professional, even individual contributor. You want to grow in emotional intelligence. You want to better grow self-awareness, self-management. All of the reasons that you might be listening to this. That's one way to do it. Second, if you're just listening, I might be reading things out. So if you're watching, why is he reading that? It's on the screen. There might be some people that are just listening to this in the background, listening to it while they're driving. So I would hope that they're not watching it. So keep that in mind. So today, before we get started, what I do at Advisa, what we do with my team at Advisa, is this. Companies are struggling to attract and retain the talent they need. At Advisa, we partner with clients to create effective teams, leaders, and cultures, empowering them to be places where people love to work. I'll leave that up there for a second because that's going to parlay nice into the subject matter we're getting into today. So if you're going to hold on to something there, you can hold on to the word struggle and then retain the talent, and then check out effective teams, leaders, and cultures, empowering them, and then a place where people love to work. So I'm hoping there's a lot of meat in today's conversation, in today's session, and we'll get into what that is right now. So disclaimer before we get started. I'm going to dive into a topic that can sometimes be a little dicey, a little polarizing. So I just want to put this out there that I'm one person that works at Advisa. So I don't represent our entire organization when I'm making any statements or I'm toying with an idea or I'm coming up with questions or observations. I'm speaking as BJ McKay. That's the first thing. The second thing is I am not an expert in some of the things that I am exploring today. I have experience. I've been doing this for a little over 13 years. I'm in and around organizations. I run an organization. So I have a lot of different inputs and I have some expertise in some places, but the actual subject matter and some areas that overflow into what I'm going to talk about today, I don't hold a degree from a university that would put initials next to the end of my name. All right. And some of these things I'm talking about, I don't even believe there are expertise in there or a way that you would label down like you're a doctor of X, Y, and Z. I could be wrong. I might be wrong a lot in today's presentation. So we'll see how it goes. And if you've downloaded the note-taking guide, you could probably have that handy as we get started here. So what am I talking about? I am talking about identity. All right. So why did I pick this topic? I picked this topic because more and more I'm getting pulled into environments and my team's getting pulled into environments where there's a lot going on. Particularly with people that are running and managing human capital, talent, human resources, CEOs of organizations. A couple of things, diversity, equity, and inclusion is one of them. COVID response is one of them. Adjusting the culture and workplace to meet the needs of the younger end of the workforce. And the list can likely go on based upon wherever location you find yourself in the country. I'm broadcasting from the United States, but around the world, you're not seeing, there's different contexts people operate in. What I've been trying to figure out is a way to simplify some of these like polarizing big themes and turn it into something that I say we, but that I can wrap my arms around. I'm getting brought in to diagnose, define. It's the first thing I'm going to get to do. All right. I'm going to put together a plan. And eventually that plan, we're going to deploy that plan. So it has to live and breathe and actually produce a tangible result. And some of these instances and these themes that are out there right now, it's tough to really wrap your arms around it enough to make a leadership decision, make a systems decision, an organizational level decision. So my hope is that we can play with some ideas today. I'm going to play with where I'm at with this right now. And if you make connections, great. As we're taking notes, great. A lot of this is going to be your own intelligence going on to the note-taking guide that you have. And then hopefully it brings up some different questions. I'm looking at this from one angle. I'm trying to look at it from the angle of where I apply myself and my team to organizations. But I'm sure there's other angles to this too. And if you reach out to me, you get this, you'd like to talk more about it, or think maybe I misfired on something or got something wrong, I am wide open because this is all dual learning we're doing right now. So let's talk about identity. Why I picked the word identity is because when I'm working with organizations, and if you're in an organization, identity is kind of the core theme that matters. What do I identify with? Am I part of your group? And if we look at this is from Merriam-Webster, the definition. So this isn't me. This is Merriam-Webster. The qualities, beliefs, etc., that make a particular person or group different from others. A particular person or group different from others. So building off that, if you think about, well, what's an identity? You could think about sports analogies. You could think about companies analogies. I work at Apple. I drive a Tesla. I don't do either of those things, but you get my drift. I play baseball for the Yankees. All right. I work for X, Y, and Z organization. Those identities carry a ton of weight. They are incredibly informative in terms of how people operate, who's invited in, who is not invited in, how do we behave if we're living within that identity, all right? And if we go even further, these are synonyms from the same website. This is Merriam-Webster for identity: identicalness or sameness. So what's the identity of the organization? What are you trying to make identical or the same about the folks that live and breathe and make up the universe that is your organization? All right. What is the sense-making tool? It starts and stops, I believe, with identity. Where we put our stake in the ground, if you will, and said, this is who we are. When we do that, it's interesting what the antonyms are: dissimilarity, disparity, disparateness, unlikeness. But if we figured out what we are, we can now make very, very clear what we're not at multiple levels. The challenge that we're finding with identity is, if that's not clearly defined, what are you here? Well, we're a software company. We manufacture tabletops. We make X, Y, and Z piece of equipment. We provide this service. Is that an identity? I would say no. That's what you do. That's what you make. That might be how you make money, but that's not an identity. I can say we play baseball here, but that's not an identity. An identity would be when you put a label on it. We are and I'll keep going back to the New York Yankees. Well, I'm with the New York Yankees. New York Yankees exist in a place. There's a uniform that you wear. There's things that you do and don't do. There's places that you compete against teams that are not the New York Yankees. So this is, I don't want to beat it to death, but that's essentially why I'm picking identity to play with this idea. And again, just try to equip each one of you, like, why would it matter that I have an identity? We're going to get to the type of problems that you might be able to solve or get at from a more creative angle as we go down the path. I'm going to show you two examples of identity, and you can almost defer I'm going to get ahead of myself here, but you can look at question 1 or request 1 on the note-taking guide if you want to jot some things down yourself. So this happens to be Advisors, where I work. So our noble why is where we start, and it says we exist to improve the world one leader at a time. So already you can see, who would we want to join us in this? If you're going to come work at Advisor, what should you want to do? Well, this is like the first line where someone can opt in or opt out. I want to improve the world one leader at a time. I want to work with leaders. Great. Yes or no? Our mission, powering leaders to change lives. All right. Is that with your energy, your time, your experience, with where you live, with who you know? Is that what you want to aim things at? Is that the mission you want to lock arms with us in? Yes or no? Competitive advantage. I won't read the whole thing, but we partner with clients to create magnetic cultures by enhancing leaders' effectiveness. And there's a list there of some of the ways that we do that: tech-enabled, data-driven, executive architected, behavioral-based. So this is another thing. Are you adding? What behaviors add to the competitive advantage at Advisor? Is what you're going to bring when you work here going to add to one of those elements? Yes or no? Finally, vision. Most loved and trusted leader effectiveness partner in our markets. That's 1. Caring, intellectually challenging environment for our team to thrive professionally and personally. So there's a lot of language in there. All right, loved and trusted. We want, when it comes to leadership effectiveness, we want to be a partner with our client in the markets or locations that we operate. We want to be caring. Therefore, you, if you are part of this, if you are part of this identity, should be caring. You should be hungry for intellectual challenge because that's the type of environment we're going to foster here. All right. And then for teams to thrive professionally and personally, this is not a burn the candle at both ends environment. It's not going to work. We have tools, resources, teams. We have ways that the folks that work here, family and work, personal and work, there is a place for that, and we have to operate and live and exist within those lines. And finally, our values are down the right side. And for those listening, integrity, family, excellence, teamwork, client service, continuous learning, and belonging. So the values dive even deeper to what do you value, person who's considering joining this identity, joining this team. And if at any point, if I'm looking at this and I'm like, teamwork. I don't want to be on a team. I don't want to do team type activities. Well, red mark. Like it's not, you get to do some of this stuff and you don't get to do some of it. This is high level mission, vision, values, and we have a few other pieces in there as well. I'll give you one more. That's one example. This is an example from the Arsenal, which is a sports performance and CrossFit gym that I own and train at every day. I'm actually going there next. So our vision, a community where the future of health and fitness is lived now. Mission, to deliver a lifetime of data-driven fitness results, interpreted and curated by trained professionals to every athlete, regardless of age or ability. So that's our vision and then our mission. So again, hopefully you're seeing the themes of what language is jumping out to you that define the identity of the organization and then defining who lives, breathes, and operates within that organization. It would be people that want these things and are bringing something to these. Is it data-driven fitness results? Are you a trained professional? Like, are you going to discriminate as to which athletes you'll work with and you won't? Well, if you're doing that, then you're probably not going to be a good fit here. We work with everybody, okay? And then values, I have the acronym LET GO, but it's listen first, then learn. Ego is the enemy. Taking care of my athletes. Give your best, others first. So those get down to the level of day in and day out, whenever I'm in any type of interaction. Am I living, breathing, and operating by those values? Because they can be measured. There's behavior that shows that you're battling that ego, battling the selfishness. I deserve this and I shouldn't have to do that. You can see that behavior in your organization, and we can see it with our people. Listen first and then learn. How well are you making a connection before you're correcting somebody, before you're training somebody? All of these things, I don't have to go to all of them, but they make up, and hopefully I gave an example of what an identity is and what it can look like. I'll depart from this slide one last time, and I want to show you something from the folks at Stanford University. This, if you see at the top of the screen, I don't know if Derek, you could bring that up for me. This is from stanford.edu. You can see the URL up there. But this is an example of another way to put it, where Jim Collins and Jerry Porras describe a well-constructed vision as comprised of two parts. And what I added to this is that core ideology. Core ideology includes both the essential purpose of the organization, why it exists, and the core values or what we stand for. Envision Future is made of both a clear picture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can read that. So they say that you need these elements in place before strategic planning can even begin. And this is from Stanford that I'm riffing off of right there. Let's get my deck back up here. So hopefully that's a helpful walkthrough where to think about. When I'm like, what's the identity of your organization? You're like, well, I don't even know where to start. Start with, and that NTG is note-taking guide, which you should see on the page that you got this from. If you're watching this on YouTube, go to the Leadership Talks extension of Advisa, and you'll find that note-taking guide. And Q1 means question one. So now's a good time if you want to hit pause, if you have the note-taking guide, bring up your own company values, dig them up for some of you if you have to, and get those down because we're going to use them again. So if you hit pause right now, it'd be a good time. And then when you come back, you can restart. So where does my organization's identity matter? All right. So now we're advancing this. All right. I know what the identity is, BJ, we have our mission, vision, and values. Like that's our identity. All right. Where it's most useful is in figuring out what is allowed here and what is not allowed here. All right. What are we bringing in? And have we clearly defined it so that we can make selection? All right. This gets down to, you guessed it because you're watching this, it gets down to people. So at all times in the process, if I'm vetting candidates to come in for jobs, I'm vetting my employee, my whole workforce, leadership development, who's getting escalated within different levels. This identity pervades that whole process. All right. Bringing it down to the front end of the hiring process, how you're marketing all the way through. It matters because if you don't have a clear understanding and embody this as a leadership team, guess who gets to decide what your identity is as an organization? Whoever is the loudest, typically, which could be who? Customers, clients, people outside the organization, individuals within the organization that wield influence. You're going to get, it's the tail wagging the dog a little bit, and it's not those individuals' fault that that's happening. It's the organization's fault for not pinning these down and putting the thought in to really clarify who are we, why are we, where are we going, and who fits this? Have we made it clear enough that people can opt in and opt out of this identity, this approach, this universal approach to addressing a problem, to meeting a market need, to delivering value, whatever that looks like? So your organizations matter huge. And where I'll take you next is on question 2. What are the characteristics of who is included in that identity? So when you look back at, well, here's my organization's mission, vision, values, our core ideologies, etc., leadership competencies, if you have them, the whole purpose of that comes down to people understanding it and behaving it or embodying it or doing those things inside the auspices of their time on the job, the 8 hours a day or whatever it is that I'm working at your company. So I challenge you with question 2 to think about, given all those things, who are we looking for? What are the type of characteristics in the person we're looking for? All right. Do they need to be driven? Do they need to be sales oriented? How do they need to handle conflict? Do they need to have a certain kind of experience that they're bringing to advance that identity? Do they need to live a certain place? I didn't really clearly define this down with examples for you to cut and paste, but I'd challenge you to start thinking through, if your identity isn't clear enough to know who you want, you might want to put an earmark next to question number 1 to say, hey, we might want to tighten this up. It's not exhaustive enough to get us what we're looking for further down the chain when it comes to who we're looking for, not only collectively. I mean, these are high-level competencies. Everybody in your organization should match these characteristics because they're part of your identity. But then you'll eventually dial that down to job-based. Like in this role, we're looking for it to amp up or turn up these characteristics. And these roles, these characteristics. So they're going to be useful at different levels. So once again, if you need some time for this, you can pause here and then come back in just a second for question 2. Once again, you need to know who you're looking for. Who is that identity, that message of your organization looking for? So what should you be thinking about when it comes to identity? And outside of what I've already covered, what I've come to is, what does this identity exclude? Who is it not going to attract? Okay, so if I know that, like, you can go like really, really high level and say, if I throw out there, integrity is important. Well, who does that exclude? You guess it, somebody without integrity. Okay, pretty simple, straightforward one. But there could be other elements of your identity. Like, for instance, what if you're completely remote and working alone in isolation for long periods of time needs to be an attribute you have to bring to that job, almost collectively? That's just how that company is organized. That discriminated there, didn't it? There are people that are going to be attracted to that identity of an organization. There are people that aren't. Now, you could do that at the job level. I'm just trying to come up with just different scenarios you can think of. But who are we bringing in? Like, who is this attracting? And I mean, if you want to think about who your current identity is attracting, look at who already works there. That's a good group of people to vet out. Hey, why do you work here? Not just a net promoter score. Would you invite anybody else to work here, say that you should come work here, but why do you come here? What do you think this place is? So take a second now. Questions 3 and 4 on the note-taking guide. Once again, if you don't have the note-taking guide, it's not the end of the world. But if you want to take this to the next level, I'd go back and print it out. Who is it excluding? All right. And question 4 is one I want you to think about a little more. This is a harder one. Who may I be excluding that I feel should be included based on who we say we are as an organization? You might be writing who's excluded on there and be like, wait a second. We need those people. I need someone like that. I need to go back and look at our mission, vision, values, how we describe these things and figure out how to adjust them so that we're opening up our doors to folks that are otherwise not sitting in here, that aren't on our team, that would add the type of benefit, the type of diversity onto our team that's currently missing. And then when you get those people, or if you're excluding, I'm also considering people that no longer work at your organization that maybe you wish they did. I really wish so-and-so was here. I really wish they were here. That's also great data for you to think about. What is it about that? Can we glean anything from that? Is there a pattern that exists for those people that end up getting excluded or currently in your culture feel excluded? Can we do something about that while we still have time? In most cases, the answer is yes. So that's the good news. If you're thinking about who might I be excluding? Oh no, our culture is excluding these people. It's excluding these people. And I'm going to dive into another layer here in a second of what to consider. Step 1, like you always hear from me, is awareness, right? And then it moves to self-management, and then on we go. So once you know who you might be excluding, you're getting feedback that's tough to hear. We feel excluded. We don't feel connected. That is important, particularly when they're folks and they're people that are going to fit that identity of your organization. Okay? You need to build revenue. You need the people that can produce the product, deliver the service, do all those things. Having that framed up first and locked in makes these conversations so much easier because then there's less gray area to operate in. All right? You have a company, your company's built to deliver value. That's a pretty simple way to put it. You want the type of people that are in there to deliver the most value. Now, I don't even want to touch the areas because I think in my line of work, maybe I'm a little Pollyannish about this, but I don't even want to talk about like race, gender, sexual orientation, religious orientation, whatever in the type of criteria I'm talking about. In my mind, those are like the table stakes. You should definitely be addressing that. If that is the reason that people that can be delivering value based on the identity you've laid out for your organization, they literally cannot work for you, there's your first fix. What is preventing these talented people that would fit this organization, fit these roles, fit this mission and vision and values that we laid out? What's preventing them from wanting to work and stay here? So if you're like, why isn't he touching on those? I just think that's like the low bar. Of course, we need an environment that accommodates all of those things. But in an order of priority, if we don't get some of these things organized first, it's tough to figure out where all that stuff fits. Where am I bending? Where am I flexing? Where am I changing? It just gets confusing. And then, we need to wrestle with it, BJ, 100%. But if managers day in and day out and leaders day in and day out do not know what to do with your efforts, how am I supposed to behave? What am I supposed to be doing differently? If there is not clarity, you are just going to have a frustration wheel spinning over and over and over and over again because I just don't know what you want me to do. So that's what I'm going to touch there. But I want you to think question 3 and 4, who am I excluding? In particular, who am I excluding that I want included? Who am I excluding that I want included? This might be another time to hit pause if you're watching this by yourself or with a group to check out questions 3 and 4. Now I'm going to bring up 2 useful categories. All right. 2 useful categories to think about this. And I want to credit one of my clients. I won't bring up their name if they don't. I don't know. I didn't give them permission that I was going to talk about this, but in a conversation with them, I came up with an idea. This person leads the HR effort for a large organization, and they were wrestling with how to manage all these things that we're talking about today. And they were coming with some terrific ideas, and I was just trying to jam and figure out, all right, what's sticky? Like, what can we turn into something? And two categories came up. I don't know if he came up with it or if I came up. I don't remember where it came from, but I thought, wow, that's functional. So when you're thinking about that identity and you're thinking about who are we excluding and who are we including in that identity piece, I want to separate out two things to add clarity. The first one is systems. And an example of a system, like a systemic thing that we can change to open up maybe a portal for some people that are excluded that we want to work here. All right. I'll tell you a story. This is a made up story, but I bet it's real somewhere. I am a single grandmother raising my 3 grandkids. All right. And I work 2 jobs, but I have all this expertise that I can bring to the table and I could put the time in. All right. However, given my situation, where I have to work and the PTO policy that you have in place makes it impossible for me to even apply for a job at your organization. So there's an example of a system you could look at. Well, let's look at our PTO. Let's look at remote versus on-site work. How can we accommodate? Are these too rigid? Can they be adjusted? I'm not telling you what to do there, by the way. It's what to evaluate. That's one example. Another example would be if for religious reasons, let's say you have a facial hair policy or a type of haircut policy, like long hair, not long hair. Let's say that there's religious reasons that someone couldn't shave their beard. I'm not including myself in this. I could, I just don't. But I can't shave my beard for religious obligation. All right, like this is pretty straightforward. I literally, you have it in your manual that says you cannot have facial hair. All right, that's another system that's in place that's excluding someone that could otherwise be a very productive member of this organization. They want to be part of that identity. They want to wear your hat with your logo on it, and they want to live out all that you have on there. But systemically, that's a restrictor. I just can't do it. And we can go on and on in that category, but like you have systems over here. The second side is the messier side. The other part is leadership, which is how people are treated. And when you think about leadership, think about leaders, leadership skills, leadership competencies. All right. Some of the over and over again, you'll read in all of these different periodicals, I could put up a litany of them, is the importance of emotional intelligence. All right. Knowing how to adapt to people around me, showing empathy, listening, caring, restricting the impulse to act right away, even if I personally, as a leader, am angry, upset, something triggered me, to take in greater perspective when I'm interacting and leading my teams. So there is a whole bunch of inclusion and exclusion that happens in the leadership side, which is people behaving. It's not systemic. It's not a system. It's not a policy. It is an actual, like, leaders interacting with people, what they say, what they don't say, where they have meetings, where they don't have meetings, how they communicate with people. There's a whole function of the identity. And remember, we're building this off of identity that lives in your systems. If your identity is unclear, which systems are the right ones? Are my systems including the right people, or are they not? How about my leadership? How is my leadership, if my identity is defined, how does my leadership formed, developed, trained to live out that identity in all that they're doing with the organization? In leadership side systems, you have like, and I tend to go to football because it works for me. So system, you have systems in place. If you play for the Dallas Cowboys, there's systems in place. There's things that you do. There's HR protocols. There's all kinds of systems in place. Times you have to show up, places you can go, places you can't go within the building. There's all kinds of things like that. How you get drafted. And then there's leadership in there. There is development. Those athletes, if we just go to the athlete level, go to the weight room. They go and have nutrition consulting. They go to different places to grow and develop so that they can perform for that identity, that star, the Dallas Cowboys this weekend collectively. All right, they're working together. I might be the center for the football team. I might be the safety on the defense. We're having a different experience, but we're operating within the same identity. So without that identity laid down, knowing what your systems are and aren't doing gets more challenging. Knowing what your leaders lack or what they need more of or what they need resources on or what development they need or what they need to do, that gets probably triple hard to do. And and I just would recommend to unpack both of those and look at them separately. And if you want to mesh them back together later, maybe you could. But I wanted to bring up those categories at this point in time just to change the way maybe you might be looking at this, or maybe the way that your organization is breaking this type of challenge down. So moving into closing here, what should you do now? So question 5 or 6, there's a little gut check on, is your organization following through with the promises you wrote above in what we've covered so far? Are they following through? Yes or no? If they aren't, why or why not? This isn't a judgment call. It's not to go like shake your fist at leadership if you're not the top leader in the organization. It's just to figure out, like, what should we be thinking about? What's the next most productive conversation about this? And if you've done this well, you're connecting all of this to an organizational identity. Your organization is the universe for your employees. It's where they're operating, creating value, communicating. When things lack clarity, even between two people, dysfunction emerges. Always. Like, that's a human thing. But when there's clarity and there's a level of order to operate in, it gets so much easier to get work done, to want to go to work, to predict what's going to happen next in a world that seems to get less and less predictable in a lot of ways. And finally, number 6 on there is, what are you going to do? If you're somebody who watches these often through different mechanisms that I have out there within my client base or beyond, I always want you to leave with, what can you do? What personal power can you bring to this? Where can I take this versus, yeah, my organization should do this. If you're listening to this, you're interested in development, you're interested in this type of stuff, you're interested in leadership, emotional intelligence, sales or influencing excellence, you're interested in that. My guess would be people will listen to you if you make a case in the order that we talked about today. If there's something unclear with your organization's identity, if you run that up the chain, odds are pretty good you're going to get someone to listen to you. Well, I've tried and they didn't listen to me. All right, well, that's probably another conversation. If there's no interest or openness to somebody wanting to talk about the identity of the organization, I would struggle with that organization as well. Because I think these are the things that people should be most proud of. The organizations, companies, teams, clubs, the things that we spend money on as consumers. We like to see where people are bragging. They have the Apple logo like on their car. Apple doesn't make a car as far as I know. Like Tesla, they wear the t-shirts that represent their car. Jeep culture. It's all over the place. Shouldn't your organization have that level of clarity of who you are and who you aren't, so that you can go out and rock that brand and say, yes, I'm this, I'm proud of it, ask me about it. Please ask me about it. And ultimately, if you're a leadership individual listening today, wouldn't you want an identity that is what we do at Advise is magnetic? It's magnetic to the exact type of people, all things aside, that are going to advance to this mission and vision and epitomize these values. So with that, I want to close with this. My closing thought is, at any level of the organization, whether you're at the very front lines, you're very new, or you're the CEO, founder of the company, it's our job to embody the identity of the places that we work. And you're like, well, I'm just an employee. I just work there. I would say consider reframing that. Because if I just go somewhere, I'm buying your life. I'm buying your time for money. How's that land on you? It sounds pretty cheap if you ask me. Well, I get paid a lot. I'm not. You think about that long and hard enough, you're going to realize it's probably not a very good deal. However, BJ, we have to get paid for money. I get to go to work. I understand my locus of control. I understand the identity that I personally am going to bring. I know who I am. And I know what I'm going to bring. And I know what's going to elevate other people. I know I'm going to help this organization. I believe that my identity and the values that I'm bringing to the table are important. And I want to align those with the type of organization that wants similar things. So if you're going to a company, you just took a job to take a job, you don't even know your own values. You don't even understand your own identity. All right. You're in a pretty weak position to negotiate what the organization should look like. Get that in order first. And then you can have a meaningful interaction with your current company. I'm not telling you quit. I don't like it here. How much do you know about it? How many times have you asked leaders about what is identity here? Can I learn more about that? Can I figure out what best looks like here? What greatest? What's the highest value, truth, and good that we do here? If you've done that and you don't agree with it, I think you already know what I'll say from there. It's time to move on. It's time to find a place that better aligns with the direction you want to go and the value you want to bring to the world and a team. Okay, that should happen. If you're in the organization, all right, if you're a leader at the top, people should meet you and it should be vibrating off of you what this place is all about. And it's going to draw and it's going to magnetize. It's going to bring people in that every time I'm in your presence, leader, I get more and more confident. I get more and more competent with who we are, what we are, with consistency and repetition. You're not changing what we're doing day after day. I don't sense a confusion. Again, at the identity level, there can be problems in the market, problems with sales, problems with the product. I'm talking about the identity. That's the thing that should be the most stable. And if leaders can't embody that at the highest level, live it out in how they communicate, email, interact, text, type, walk down the hall, drive their car in and out of the parking lot, interact in the community outside the organization. The next step, you would need to fix that soon if you want to have the type of culture that will draw people into it. How do I fix it? The clarification exercises that we just talked about today. Shore up what the identity is and get that senior team on board, and then build in training and development around any gaps of awareness, management, understanding, emotional intelligence, how that articulates down to job descriptions. There's a lot of work that we could do in that sense. But if you're embodying the identity of the organization, if you look around the table with who you work with every day and you see them embodying the identity, the clearly defined identity of the organization, it doesn't matter what color they are. It doesn't matter who they love and who they're looking for. It doesn't matter what their religion is. It doesn't matter where they came from. You're going to look around at a table of people that you are glad you locked arms with to take on whatever challenge you've defined as your organization's outcome. Because if it's big enough and it's compelling enough and it's interesting enough, you're going to have to want all of your forces facing forward, not pointing fingers at each other. So leaders, embody that identity. And then if you're a frontliner, you're the newest person on the bottom, or it'd be, in this case, be the top of the totem pole. I don't know how they make totem poles. Embody the identity. Do the things that you would expect from leadership up chain, and then just test me. How does it feel? Maybe not day one, but watch how it feels at night when you look in the mirror and take an assessment. How did I do today? How did I do? And the way that I do this, I start with my own values. Okay. Fortunately, in my case, and the other circumstance I operate in, my personal values and the values of the organizations I'm a part of aren't too far apart. So most days I end up looking in that mirror and I know where I misfired a few times, but I also know the days where I crushed it and I feel pretty good. I did something important and I elevated another group of people, not only within my organizations, but with my clients and the work that we do, because it matters. And if you're watching this, I'm sure that your work matters. And if you're thinking, I don't know if my work matters with this company, your time and energy is limited on the amount of time you have on this earth. So I would consider thinking about that, thinking about where you put it, because you can matter. There's somebody or some organization right now that likely would value you on their team to do what you do best. So hopefully today was a useful excursion. Again, I covered a lot of ground and I covered at a lot of high levels. I am still sorting out where I'm landing on a lot of these things. Is identity where I'm going to put the flag down in terms of solving some of these problems, whether it's leadership inclusion and exclusion, systemic inclusion or exclusion. That's going to continue to evolve over time. It's evolved the last several years. I've been thinking more and more about it. So open any feedback, send it to my email, hit me up on LinkedIn. There's my links on there. And I'm trying to make sure that we're getting out a Leadership Talks edition every week. I've set that up with Derek, my man over here on the right. I'm going to do my best to live that out, barring any vacations or otherwise that would pull me away from the podcast studio here. So thank you so very much for watching. Check me out there. And once again, subscribe and share if you found any value of this, and bring the feedback my direction. Take care.